What up, world? This is the GoalNet recording live from Chicago, and we are here today to talk about CCM Axis and how it compares to the Premier 2 and the EF4. And you'll notice on the right, as clean and wonderful as my P2 set was, that was the last time I embraced white on a goalie pad. Practice what you preach. I love the solid colored look, and as you can see with the two pads on the left, I am living my mantra. However, there are times and spaces where white can look clean. But anyway, let's get back on track. So the purpose of today's video is to explain the difference between these three goalie pads. So CCM's current fleet of pads are the left two pads here, which are the CCM eFlex 4 and the CCM Axis. And the Premier 2, it is what is being phased out. The Premier is pretty safe to say has been one of the most successful lines, if not the most successful line in the history of goaltending. So it's pretty important to understand what has changed and why CCM has updated their pads. So let's take a deep dive and go through this. So all three of these pads are a 35 plus 1.5 with a double break internal, no break external, and they have the softest boot available. So within reason, they are very comparable pads. As you look at the knees, you can see I have no outer flap, no knee cradle, all quick motion strapping, no boot strap. So for anybody that's wondering what happens maybe if I go from Premier to eFlex or from Premier to Axis or from eFlex to Axis, we have you covered hopefully here with this video. So first things first is the boot angle. This is probably the hardest thing to capture in video, but I will do my best to do this. So when it comes to the boot, there are two things that you need to be concerned with. One is the flex of the boot. The second is the angle. So all three of these pads have a very soft boot flex, which means you can tie the pad tight to your skate. And when you're doing things like RVH and recovering, the pad is going to flex and move very naturally with your body. What's different is how this pad will fit around your skate and your ankle. So if we look at the Premier, this is what I would call an upright boot. This is kind of an open angle. If we imagine a straight line coming down the CCM and to the toe, we can see that's a very open angle, which means this pad is going to sit up and away from our foot a little bit. If we compare the Axis and the eFlex, they're pretty much the same boot angle, even though it might not be coming through very well. And it's more of a 90 degree, which means when I come down, this boot is more straight across. Same thing here, down the CCM logo and across, more of a 90 degree angle. So what does that mean? It means this pad is going to sit flat on your skate and closer to your ankle and your shin, versus the Premier 2 is going to sit away from up off your foot a little bit more. And it's going to be, by design, a little bit more of a loose fit versus I think these two pads you can wear much tighter and keep them a little bit more snug and more connected kind of feeling with your leg. And that is one of the reasons that CCM went with the Axis and away from the Premier, is that as strapping's evolved, as the way people play the position has evolved. Like, let's remember the Premier, the original RBK Premier, I think came out in 2002. Oh no, wait, I'll take that back. 2006, but I mean, it's at least 15 years old. It is a goalie pad that has been around. It's a tested design, but the way people play the position has definitely changed over the last 10 to 15 years. And that's why we have Axis. So I will do my best, and it's another thing that's very hard to capture in video. We'll kind of compare boot flex as well, although all three of these pads, again, are very flexible. All right, so here is Premier 2. As you can see, pretty soft and flexible. Here is eFlex. And you can even see when I'm smushing this down how the boot sits flatter and closer to my floor versus the Premier 2. And here is Axis, and as you can see, very soft as well in the boot flex, just like the eFlex. And as you can see, when I smush the boot down, It's pretty flush against my floor, which means it's gonna sit nice and tight to your skate. Okay, the next thing we're gonna notice, which is mostly aesthetic, but it does just speak to not having any excess weight or excess material on the goal pad, and that is the binding. So if we follow the Premier 2, really easy to see, we've got the gold binding here. A little bit less easy to see an E-Flex floor, but I'm running my finger along it and we've got the binding. Now we go along axis and there's no binding. So this is a super clean design. And you can see that CCM has also moved to a speed skin outer gusset versus nylon on the E-Flex and the Premier 2. All right, so the next thing we're gonna do is take a look at the leg channel and the strapping. So I will try and actually line these up a little bit better here as we're watching, but hopefully it's very crystal clear on the camera. The axis leg channel, the wraps kind of stop not that far from the boot brake there, versus here in the E-Flex and here in the Premier, they are much deeper. So this is going to give the goaltender two benefits with the axis. One of them is that it's just going to give a better range of motion. In a lot of those subtle movements like the RVH, you are not going to have the wraps interfering with any steep leg angles. And then secondly, and don't laugh too hard, this is a real thing, but it's just going to be a lot more breathable for goaltenders that are on the ice a lot at the end of practice. Just going to be a lot more breathable. If we take a look, all three of these pads just have the quick motion strapping. And even though at first blush, they all might look similar, there are some nuances and some differences. So if we take a look at the Premier, this was the first generation of that. It's pretty simple. We just have a horizontal strap here. If we take a look at the E-Flex, you'll notice that we have the molded Gen Pro piece, which essentially forms a Y with the sliding surface here, or the inner calf wrap, or calf landing area, I should probably say. And then if we look at the axis pad, you can see this has a molded pillow right here, which is actually gonna elevate the goaltender's leg, which is gonna help get their leg in the right position in the butterfly for recovery and will also help with seal. So that's one of the key differences with the strapping here as it pertains, as you can see here, in the sliding surface or the inner calf wrap, as we wanna put it. But the strapping here is pretty much the same. Where we do see some changes are actually inside the pad here. And PS, if anybody is catching my shoes tonight, these are one of my prized possession. These are unreleased samples. I shouldn't even really put them on camera. But with the quick motion strapping here, there's a Y strap. And you can see medium, there are different sizes, but there's not a lot of adjustability. If we focus over here on the E-Flex, you can see coming through here, we have some additional adjustability from this D-ring, and then this is kind of a Y, but not really. And then we also have a loop, which is just gonna kind of change the feel on the strap. And then if we dive into the axis pad, it most closely mimics the E-Flex pad. In terms of the quick motion, so you've got the Gen Pro inner strap, you have the adjustable ring, and then you have the D-ring. In terms of the knee landing, all of mine, I get the completely open knee cradle. And then you can see all three of these have the 3D landing block. So the knee cradle between the three of them is gonna be pretty similar. That is a custom option though. So it's something I've customized. Like I said, this is a pretty even look at all three pads side by side. If this is something you're concerned with, if you can, I know COVID's going on, but definitely go check out your local hockey shop, talk to a good fitter and understand what your different options are with the knee cradle. But as you can see, pretty similar pad to pad with the way I get my knees. Really the only difference is gonna be the length of the wraps and then how the calf portion of the quick motion strapping. So there's some intangibles on the axis pad that are really hard to see, and I'll kind of talk us through. So first things first is the CCM P4 was probably the first pad that really talked about hard rebounds as a technology. And since then, pretty much every pad on the market since then over the last 5 to 6 years, appealing to a certain style of goalie, has talked about hard rebounds. E-Flex, by contrast, is meant to appear to a different style goalie, and it has no technology in it to kick out rebounds. And then the Axis pad has the Max Rebound Plus. So as I mentioned, Premier 4, that evolved into Max Rebound, which is a sheet of foam in the face of the pad, specifically designed to kick rebounds out. And if you zoom in on the lacing here, you'll actually see some orangish yellowish foam, which is the Max Rebound. The Axis pad has that as well. And I can say that it definitely in early testing kicks the rebounds out much harder than Premier. Versus E-Flex, the puck kind of hits it and stops in front of you and is designed for a goalie that wants to get a rebound. If we look at the top of the pads, we talked about binding removal. E-Flex has a top binding. Premier has a top binding. Axis does not have a top binding, so that really cleans up the top inner edge and then also gives you maximum coverage where you're not giving away some space there to the binding. If we look at the inner sliding edge of these pads, all three of them are slightly different, but Axis is most similar to E-Flex. So CCM Premier, one of the most unique features of this pad, which was highly copied for a while, was this inner round roll. And this thing seals like crazy because it almost has a filler. So if the pad doesn't come down flush, there's something to fill that. But based on feedback from retail, NHL pro goalies, and CCM's own internal testing, they feel that most goalies in the market today want this flat inner edge, which is a feature that most closely aligns with E-Flex. So in terms of how the pad is constructed for sliding, you'll see it is most closely aligned with E-Flex. But like if we look at the calf wedge, we'll see this one is angled, this one is rounded, and then this one is most squared. So each one of the pads is designed to go with it. But what is different between the E-Flex over here and the Axis here is this inner sliding surface. If you can hear, that is extremely firm, and you'll notice I'm not really smushing the material. It's much softer on the E-Flex. Hopefully you can hear that noise and see me smush with my thumb. So even though it has the kind of same shape as the E-Flex on the inner edge, it's going to be much harder. That is going to translate to a better seal than the E-Flex and a better slide. It's more efficient with energy, and that is why CCM, even though they kind of went with the E-Flex design. And if we look at Premier, that was always relatively soft. The goal with Axis was to make a better sliding pad that had that, I'd say, more minimalistic design like E-Flex, where you don't have this kind of filler piece like you do on the Premier 2 or any of the Premier pads that were in front of it in the line. All right, so we got about 2 minutes left in this video with the Instagram TV format. The last thing I'm going to cover is the comparison in flexibility, both vertically and torsionally, and then I'm going to try and do a wrap up with the last minute. All right, so E-Flex, this pad is pretty soft top to bottom, very scrunchy, and then also torsionally kind of hard to see, but the pad will twist a little bit from the knee down to the toe, which is what we define as torsional. Here is the Premier 2, and again, some of this stuff is so hard to show in video, but hopefully the description helps add to the video and it makes sense. But the Premier pad flexes, but it is just not as pliable or as soft, and then also super hard to show. But imagine it flexing from the toe to the knee. It's not going to twist side to side. And then Axis is the stiffest of the three pads. I would by no means say this is over stiff. I still think that the Bauer Supreme line, currently now the Ultrasonic, is probably the stiffest pad in the market at retail. And this is a nice balance of stiff, but not too stiff. And then the last feature as well, looking down, is that this has the triangular outer roll versus the E-Flex and the Premier have a more traditional outer. All right, so in summary, Axis is the new 2020 pad. It is the replacement for the Premier. It is not the replacement of the E-Flex. But hopefully it was clear in this video. CCM basically took the best flavor of E-Flex, the best flavor of Premier, put it all in the same pot, and made us a new recipe. So it's going to be a stiff pad with a flexible boot, a flat inner edge, and hard rebound.